All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Redefining Customer Journey Management, where it is our job to bring together world-class CX professionals and deconstruct their strategies, tactics, struggles to give you techniques, methods, and perhaps even resources to start redefining customer journey management in your organization too. My name is Jochem van der Veer. I'm the co-founder of TheyDo, and we're a software platform for journey management. We're designed to give teams overview to help them manage their journeys in one place. And my co-host today, as always, is Harold Lamberts, the founder of Essence. And they are CX. Hey, Harold. They are focusing as a CX consultancy on customer journey design. And no doubt that there is a match, given that tooling and consulting go hand in hand. But that's not the reason why we are here today. There is something happening in our domain, the domain of customer experience, CX, and we're going to go past the journey mapping stage. We've gone from all over the place to one place, and companies, at least that's what we see, are now transforming towards journey management. And we have made it our mission to help accelerate this change. So besides helping companies and their leaders accelerate this change, we believe customer journey management is about to become the next big thing in business. And we use this series of live streams to discover exactly how. Scratching our own itch, figuring out what the world really needs and how it gets done. Today, we have invited two new guests to the show, and they have earned their stripes in CX management over the years. They both created journey teams, more on this later, but they did so in very different organizations. So without further ado, we have Stephanie Pelsmakers, who is leading the CX Hub. It's basically a cross-country and cross-department initiative at ING Bank.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hey, Stephanie. Good afternoon. And it's their purpose to make everyone in ING even more customer crazy, to speak with her terms and mindset, behavior, and customer impact on all levels. And she has a track record of getting things done guerrilla style. So that is promising. Especially in a large organization like ING, this is no small feat. So we will hear about the early days of CX and how she got to work creating this journey teams and work customer-centric across the agile organization. Our second guest is Wilco Dona. Welcome to the show, Wilco.
Thanks, Jochem. Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yes, you have actually a wide-ranging experience guiding teams at large organizations through the digital transformation. Amongst them, for instance, Randstad, KPN, Alliander, with a whole slew of other names for Dutch participants, attendees today, might be familiar names, with a relentless focus on customer experience. And currently you're head of products at RTL, one of our largest media companies here in the Netherlands, where you are bringing together skilled professionals, decision makers, to deliver really on the customer-centric goals for all your brands. So we have two different perspectives today on organizing teams. But we'll get to that in a minute, because this is a live session and we want you at home or wherever you are to join us. So if you have a question, use the Q&A button below or the chat if you prefer. And we'll do a few polls along the way to make sure you can also participate in the discussion. Before we dig in and before we continue, I was actually trying to ask Harold to define our topic of today, because we are creating this model. We're looking into redefining customer journey management, and we are now at topic number 2, organizing journey teams. But Harold, what is a journey team and what do we mean with this?
Yeah, thanks, Jochem. For a second, I thought I was the only one being kicked out, so I was worried, but I was not alone. Yeah, so basically we mean, how do you organize your journey teams and or actually how do you organize your teams around working with customer journeys, yes, large or small. So some companies organize on fixed journey teams, like a fixed team per journey, or other have a centralized CX team, maybe supporting agile teams from a journey perspective. So there is no one golden ticket that solves it all for everyone, I guess. What is important, I think, is that you organize yourself in such a way that collaboration from customer perspective is baked into your way of working. Yeah? And I believe that's what customer journeys do. They actually provide the customer perspective across the touch points and throughout your internal operations to serve that customer with multiple teams, yeah? As opposed to organizing yourself in channel teams or maybe in functional teams, which is actually easily causing silo thinking or silo working to happen, intentional or not. Yeah? So the previous webinars, we focused on, customer journey management at large, but also at how you organize your journeys. So what are the key, like last time we focused on what are the key customer journeys that are strategically important for your company. Today we'll focus a bit more on, okay, what do you need in terms of team setup for that? Yeah, so how do you organize your teams to work with those journeys? So we zoom in on that and how you can collaborate as a company to serve the customer in the most optimal way. And as you'll hear from our speakers today, both at RTL and ING, they will do this in very different ways, as we already know. But I hope you can pick some cherries from either way and use it to your benefit at your organization. So that's also the whole point of this webinar series, is to learn from cases in practice and success stories and challenges so that you can use it for your benefit.
Thanks, Hal. So our own favorite visual thinker, Herman, is here also with us to evolve the framework further as we go live. And maybe while Herman is making the canvas ready for us today, I want to start asking our audience a little question. So hearing what Harold just said, what kind of team do you actually have? Teams do you actually have? And the question is now in your screen. Do you have a multidisciplinary team? Different disciplines working together? Do you have a journey team, as we say? Do you have an agile team, or more like in a more product team environment? Do you work, or do you have a vertical team like marketing, sales, or something in between? Then pick the one that suits you best. So just to see who we have here today, you can add the poll. And while you are answering the poll and Herman is starting up his drawing, Wilco, when we were doing research for this topic today, you mentioned something that I think is a good point to start. And you actually said, and please correct me if I'm paraphrasing here, but great engineers want to build beautiful things anyway. So if you give them a process, they give you a business-centric solution. If you give them an opportunity from a customer journey, they give you customer-centric solutions. So what exactly do you mean with that?
Yeah, thanks Jochem. That also has to do a little bit, I saw the poll and I'm curious what people are voting. I would click multiple boxes, but it's about creating successful teams, right? That's what we're talking about. And what I tried to say with that is basically, to me, there are three elements to a successful team. Namely the goal or the purpose of the team, let's say the individual competences of people in that team, and then the team dynamics. So if we focus on that purpose or goal, to me, it's important to make that about the customer. Really the goal of what everybody is working on in that team. That's where the customer should be central, and that's what I meant with, I think, not only engineers but everybody in their work. If they're passionate about their work, they like to solve puzzles, they like to make beautiful solutions, and so they will do that around the customer. And if you make, for example, a purpose about a team about technology, just to put a contrast there, then or a component or a project name, you will get a beautiful solution, but around that technology and around that component. And then, well, the things like silos or having a beautiful solution that is not fit for a customer is really on the rise. So to me, if we're talking about purpose, it should always be customer focused, end to end, and at the same time, and I think everybody recognizes that. If you do purpose around the customer, it's inspiring, right? What do you tell when you're at a party? What do you tell your friends and your family what you're doing? And if you have a success with your customers around your team, it's easy to celebrate. I always like to say, when do we open the champagne? And well, last but not least, it should be relevant for the organization, but also explaining the relevance of your team to the organization becomes much easier if you do it in dimensions and the language of the customer, basically.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do journeys, for instance, if we talk about the subject in particular, help you define these goals, or how do your teams adapt to talking the language of your customers? Is that something that you mean with this?
Yeah, that's a term I always use. I mean, to me, looking at successful teams, they speak the language of the customer. And basically that means the more holistic, the more zoomed out they are on what really what the customer is going to use, why he's going to use it, and what for. That's going to make the result of the team much more useful. And so basically, I mean, what we're talking about in journey teams, if your company is small enough to fit everyone into one team, then it's easy, right? Then you think about the 3 circles of Simon Sinek. If you can have a really nice why and the how and the what, it's easy to define as a company what your goal is. I mean, this story, what we're doing right now, why are we working with customer journey teams, is of course, if you need to divide your company goal into different goals for different customers, and all the models you can use there, to me, doing it alongside the customer. So either through products, and if for one product, and that's our case, for one product you even have too many people to fit in one team, then it's to stay as close as possible to the customer. Then the customer journey, in my sense, is a really nice way to align the teams.
Yeah. So are you saying that that people in the team are very goal oriented, and that therefore is for you very important to make sure that customer centricity is kind of baked into the goal in the first place, so that you don't have to add the customer as a component later, but rather define your goals in a customer-centric fashion, so you don't have to worry about that? Is that kind of the core of it?
Yeah, it should be the only goal, basically, in the sense that, and that's also what I liked, what I like with the teams when you have discussions, and in defining the goal or finding the goal, then if you make it about the customer and that becomes central in the team, then everybody in that team, because I talked about 3 dimensions, the other 2 were, of course, all the competences that are represented in your team to deliver that goal or to deliver that purpose end to end. So if you have the discussions with them in the language of the customer or on the goals of the customers, then they will think in that way as well, and they will manage their complexity on whatever their field is, whether it's in marketing or UX design or development. They will manage their complexity, but they will focus on getting together in making the combined result.
Yeah, together is important as well. I mean, we have the term multidisciplinary teams. We hear it a lot. Yeah. Is that the same to you as a journey team, or is there a difference, or when they collaborate? How would you say that is different?
I think multidisciplinary to me means is that you have all the skills in your team to be able to deliver the result. And for me, the customer team talks about what is the purpose of the team. And the purpose to me is delivering a customer journey, which in our sense, for example, we have a journey team around becoming a customer and manipulate, so a little bit about account structure. But doing that end to end, so including the back end, including the front end, including everything that has to do with that subject, making it a multidisciplinary team to me means getting all the ingredients of baking the cake, all the skills and all the competences of the people in that team. That to me is multidisciplinary.
So technically it is similar to a journey team, or it is a journey team, just a different
Exactly,
term?
it's another dimension. A journey team, to me, a successful journey team is multidisciplinary, and a multidisciplinary team as a purpose can have a customer journey. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I love that. I mean, definitely the collaborative spirit of that, and the fact that multiple disciplinary disciplines work towards the same goal. I'm a great advocate of that. The only importance is then, of course, also that the goals that you set, that you make sure you have the right customer insight to define that the goals that you define are customer centric. Yeah. Is that something that those disciplines are also helping you with in setting those goals, or can you say maybe a little bit about how you go about setting the goals in that way?
Yeah, and that's about measuring, right? And it's really important because if you set journey teams and you set a customer-centric goal, then you can also set KPIs for those teams, or how do we measure success? And measuring that and defining your goals, of course, you have to find that with the customer itself. And so customer-centric team means to me that you do both qualitative and quantitative research about how your team is doing in the eyes of the customer. It just as a funny note, I've been in a company that, and I understand it from the process, that wanted to have customer journey teams. And when they were setting the goal, they gave each other personas and dressed up as the customer and started debating with each other what the customer wanted, which is nice from a perspective of wanting to be customer-centric. But that's as far as being customer-centric as you can be, of course, because you don't have the customer on the line. It's your perception of the customer.
That multidisciplinary team doesn't only execute to achieve those goals, but actually also helps you define new goals and keep a continuous check in the market to see what's next, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit to a different organization that is ING. And ING is known for being the first large bank to complete the whole agile transformation tribe model for teams. So it makes for an interesting case to hear how you actually manage CX and journey teams in that context, Stephanie. And maybe we can start with just splitting up what your view is, because you are leading the CX hub, on having a centralized CX hub versus decentralized, having journey expertise in the tribes. If I'm correct, that is how you set it up. What is your view on how you set it up, and how does that work at ING?
Yeah, we actually have both. So we started exactly as Wilco just described. So with multidisciplinary teams, working on journeys with a customer purpose and so on. However, shortly after our agile transformation, which was, I think I was there and I loved it. It felt like you were your own CEO of your own squad, and you could work on end-to-end journeys and had all the power to decide on what you had to do and which priorities to take and so on. So that was amazing feeling. But shortly after, we went in the whole reorganization with Belgium, and a lot of other priorities came along, like PSD2 and KYC. I don't know if these terminologies are known for everyone, but let's just call them a lot of important stuff that we needed to get done and deliver. And that was the mode where we were heading into, like delivery mode and migration with the systems, with the technology, going to other countries and so on. And at some point, our global ING office said, hey, dear countries in general, like we know that customer experience is the thing that's going to differentiate us in the future. Or actually today, it's not going to be our products and services anymore, because all the banks have the same products and services. Expectations are rising every day, etc., etc. So we really need to get a heads up on CX and accelerate on that. So please go organize yourselves better around customer experience, because we noticed that slowly, customer has always been central in what we do, but slowly other things also came along and maybe once in a while popped over the customer, let's say. So that's how we started in 2018 with the CX Hub, Customer Experience Hub. And our mission was to make everyone in ING even more customer crazy than we were, or more than before. Not only in mindset, but also in behavior and in customer impact, because in the end, that's what we do it for, of course. So it's a little bit a combination of decentralized squads, which they are still there, multidisciplinary, and they should actually do what Wilco just has described. So that's the goal. The ones that stepped away from it a little bit in the last years, we are there as a centralized CX hub to get that back in their DNA. Because everything is actually, there's a lot of the right things are already there. Like we started with interviews with our internal customers, the squads and the employees, like Wilco also just mentioned. It's important to start with some validations, like what is a problem we are trying to solve. And out of those interviews came that most people are really motivated to work on the customer experience and to improve that within ING. well, everyone actually is, and they also understand the value of CX and why we should do more with it. However, in terms of capabilities, they didn't have everything yet, so a lot was there, but could still be improved, especially in terms of good examples of what we meant within ING with good CX, but also with the CX metrics. How do you measure customer experience then? And the third pillar was a priority, and that's, of course, as a consequence of all the other priorities, people said that they didn't feel the priority that much anymore as before from senior leadership and the things that were going on in the bank. So we approached it the sandwich way. I always say, I call it my sandwich approach. It's not only focus on the squads and the customer journey experts and enabling them and creating the awareness and the importance, combining all the information that was there and so on in the first place, but also approaching the leadership and to confront them with their role in this whole situation. Like if they steer on delivery, you will get delivery. It's the same as the purpose of Wilco. If you steer on outputs, then you get outputs as fast as the people can. If you steer on customer value, you get customer value. And then you celebrate when the customer value is realized and not when the delivery of the feature is there, like when something goes live, because maybe that's not a success on its own.
So the sandwich there is basically enabling the teams to deliver, but at the same time also getting management to give priority to this. Is that what you're saying in the sandwich approach?
No, the sandwich approach is to approach the CX way of working. We want to get it back in the, well, back more than before in the genes of the squads. And our initial approach was, yes, we're just going to help the squads to do that. But our interviews showed that the squads, enabling the squads alone is not going to be enough, because if the priority is not felt, they will not manage to do that alone. So the leadership also needs to understand what their role is in that. So we approach it bottom up, so the bottom of the sandwich, and top down, and everything in between should be squeezed in the middle, let's say.
Oh, actually, that's exactly what I meant. So like to take the top down and the bottom of the sandwich. Totally, yeah. So
maybe
no, it doesn't matter. We get to the point.
I see Herman also got the memo. So
Herman also got
getting a double send.
Double layer, yeah.
We see that a lot, of course. It is if you enable people in one direction, but you set your KPIs not in the same direction, then in the end, it's not going to really make it happen. Of course, of course, you need a bit of both. You also mentioned that you started with at least at yourself as a half an FTE, and now you have a core team of 4 FTE. But you also actually, the hub is much bigger than 4, because you also have people in the different tribes and squads as your virtual hub, if I can say it that way. Yeah. Can you say a little bit about how that works? So you're enabling from a smaller hub, but you're of course working closely with people in the tribes as well. How does that go in practice?
Yeah, we actually started, and I think that's very powerful because customer experience is in the end of everyone. It's not a central team that owns it. So we started decentralized. So we gathered together the few CX chapter leads or team leads. That's our internal name for team leads that were already working with customer experience in their own departments. And that's how we started, like sort of decentralized. Okay, how are we gonna make this happen, right? But soon we already, figured out that with that little club of people and me being half of my time freed up for that purpose was not gonna fly as fast as we wanted. So that's how it grew a little bit more. So our scope is quite broad, and we have the whole company in our focus. With only half an FTE that didn't work. So gradually I got somebody extra in the Netherlands, which became a core team of 1.5 person, let's say. And since January last year, Belgium was also convinced, hey, we need to also do this in Belgium. So please join us. And I said, okay, I would be glad, but then put some capacity against it as well, because otherwise we're not going to be there anymore for a long time. So now we are a team of 4 full-time FTE working in the core team of what we call the CX Hub. And we cannot do it alone with 4 people. So the strength is really the decentralized model where we connect. We have representatives of almost all the tribes, the departments, mostly CX chapter leads, but also some senior CX experts. And their role is to activate their own tribe. So what we do is bringing them together, and we do that on a monthly basis, and once every quarter we have a strategy session with them, so that they learn from each other what works, what doesn't work. They can reach out to each other, and that's how we break the silos. I think Wilco also mentioned the silos, and avoid people to invent the wheel over and over again. And we are there to enable those people, and in that way also, well, the rest of the organization as well, directly or indirectly via the 6 chapter leads in the tribes.
And you can imagine in such a large organization, of course, you need a sort of standardization also with so many tribes. I don't know how many tribes, but you mentioned there's a lot of tribes. I'm just curious, are those chapter leads or the representatives in the tribes, are those enthusiasts who just team up with you, or is that a formal role that they have to be part of the CX Hub?
Well, a few of them are CX chapter leads formally, so that's their role in the organization, but being part of the CX Hub is really based on FOMO. So we started with a few, the usual suspects, let's say, that were already quite ahead on CX. And afterwards, the CX Hub grew, but we never appointed people to be in there because the success really depends on the enthusiasm, like you say, Harold, of the people that are in there. They're really motivated to make this a success. It's really in their hearts. And it's also why a lot of people just want to join in the community that we've created so far. Just a small example. I think 1.5 years ago, I thought, hey, there's gradually growing a little bit of people that are involved in what we are doing. So maybe we should just, create a WhatsApp group. And I called it a Customer Obsession WhatsApp group. And by now we have more than 200 people in there, and they all spontaneously came in there. It was just, it's a community that lives like every day. There's activity almost every day. We share best practices. Sometimes we reach out to each other like, hey, I went to this ING flow. Oh, this is really bad. And then by accident, the product owner of the bad flow is also in there and says, oh, it's mine, I will fix it. We find each other also in that way. So that's only a small thing. But
in that case, then it's also more demand driven than dictating this is how you should work. The only thing you need then is a few success stories, so that also people, I guess, say, hey, I need that. We should do that too. Are you actively socializing success stories that way, or is that happening naturally? Or how do you organize that?
Yeah, we try to make people even more proud of ING than they already were by sharing success stories as much as we can. So if in a big organization, like you say, Harold, it's not always obvious to know everything that's going on for our customers. We tend to see the negative things a lot, but not always the positive things that are happening. So we try not to hide the negative, of course, because they are also shared, but especially also bring the good things that are going live to customers more to the rest of the organization, so that we're creating a wall of fame, a CX wall of fame. We have a newsletter where we share all the good things that are happening, the big customer-centric releases, but also small things, small improvements, and from the whole width of the company. So not only the usual digital channels, but also even improvements for our own internal employees in the call centers and the branches, so that they can do their job in a more customer-centric way.
That's a great way of just evangelizing also the customer-centric perspective, or the customer working from a customer journey perspective. Do you recognize this, Wilco? Is that something similar you do at RTL as well, or what is the dynamic at RTL for people sharing their success stories on the customer-centric?
Absolutely. I mean, I just want to go back also what Stephanie said on central versus decentral, the CX hub versus having the multidisciplinary teams. Well, in that sense, we see that. I think it's a balance, right? And we try to do that at RTL as well. She mentioned chapters. think people in the audience also know it a little bit. It came from what people call the Spotify model. If having one, so multidisciplinary teams, but also a central approach on a subject like CX, we do it basically the same. And on the second part of celebrating success, we saw that last year. I think it's typical engineers, or it's I don't know, in innovation teams, but it's never celebrated enough. And I think it has to do with they want to achieve results, and by the time they achieve result, you have some issues, things that didn't go well, so you want to fix that. And then you moved on, and you forgot that you really achieved something really special. So yeah, we try to do that a lot. It's really because that helps also in creating, let's say, the success in the team is celebrating it, is being proud of the team that you are in it, and proud what you achieved. So
can you give an example of what you celebrated, like small or big? Can you just, for folks at home, just give an idea?
Yeah, well, you know, very concretely, because that was a case. We last year we introduced 3 new subscriptions on Videoland. Before it was a one price fits all. Then we went to 3 different subscriptions, and there was
sorry to interject, Wilco. So for folks at home who are not from the Netherlands, Videoland is kind of the Netflix for the Dutch market from RTL. Sorry,
we're much more fun.
Okay, so much more. Sorry.
But yeah, we are also a subscription-based, over-the-top video entertainment platform.
Nice.
So we introduced those 3, and there was really a delicate operation. So one, building it, but secondly, also making sure that, because reliability and quality is at the forefront of our mission, also in the teams. So making sure to introduce that without hiccups, without having the kids' disease, we had this system in which we gradually increased the number of customers that we exposed to those new subscriptions, and it went really, really well. But leading up to, it was really exciting in the last weeks into launching it. So when we proposed and we had talked in the teams, what should we do more? And we do a lot with evaluation, of course, learning loop. Teams were saying, we don't celebrate our successes too much. And this was coming up, saying we should celebrate this. And then, of course, and also Stephanie was mentioning, sometimes it's coming from the board, going like, well, if we don't know if let's not plan a party, but because maybe if things go wrong, then we're standing at a party and it's. And I said, well, that might be just the right reason to have a party, because if you mess things up, then you need a lot of energy to fix that again. And instead of being in a down kind of mood, explaining to each other everything that went wrong, but let's then laugh at our sorrow and then put again all our energy into it. So we were able to plan the party, and in the end it was successful, and it was especially I think in these Corona times, it was an online party, so everybody was behind the screen, but they had drinks, and we were so it was really a great relief moment and really a celebration moment of a time of really working hard. So I think, yeah, celebrating is really important in that sense, and you should never, because there's always enough reasons not to do it.
Yeah, I like that. And the success stories and sharing, I think both of you mentioned that. Also, Stephanie mentioned the sandwich approach of not only enabling the teams with customer journeys and maybe way of working and how you organize and how you set up multidisciplinary teams, but also how do you actually set the right KPIs and targets and priorities as a leadership team. Can you maybe, or each of you, maybe say something about how you maybe enable customer journey teams to set, and how do you give them KPIs to make sure that they also give priority to it? Yeah,
from our side, like I said, from a goal perspective, it's really important that they feel the goal. So if you want to set, like, it's the word is in setting the KPIs. Of course, at a management level, we have general KPIs that we want to achieve with RTL in sense of number of customers, the revenue that we make, the margin that we make. But if we're talking about a customer team, and if you really want to make it about them, then what we also do is talk to them on what the goal should be. I mean, we had a process. For some people, it's called OGSM, going from objectives to goals to strategies to measures, which is really a waterfall method if you look into all the details, because you try to plan out everything throughout a long time. But the first part of it, of setting your objectives and setting your goals, that's something, that's a horizon that the team can work on, and the teams do that themselves, because that's a discussion with us. So setting targets from management, I think it's tempting, but it will never be a goal that you feel in your heart if somebody told you that.
What I also meant, Wilco, is that I think many companies say, okay, we all care about customer experience, but when it really comes to critical, we always prioritize short-term sales and revenue, and then CX gets. I mean, how do you bake this in to make sure that not only number of viewers or number of customers, but also, for example, customer satisfaction, like you say, of reliability of service and those kind of things, are felt as a priority from the working?
Because they're really bottom line. I mean, one of my big programs was I was responsible for the KPI Complete, which was a bundling of fixed and mobile, and we had a lot of those discussions in the beginning. What about customer loyalty? And maybe here at Videoland is the same, comparable to telecoms. Churn, so customers leaving you, is one of the major drivers of your base. So growing not only means that you have to add customers, but you have to add customers more than the customers flowing out on the back end of your product. So, and there's a direct relation to customer satisfaction and the way that you do reliability and you do customer experience and that churn. So it's really a bottom line effect. So so NPS and churn are KPIs that are in our teams that go all the way up.
It's good to link customer experience KPIs directly to revenue value, to monetary value. So you can clearly see it's either or and basically.
It's basic,
Now, you mentioned, Stephanie, yesterday also, for example, mortgages. You said the mortgages stripe is huge and there's like multiple journeys and agile teams working on that. Can you maybe say a little bit about, for example, how do they measure success? Do they, for example, only do that as a tribe as a whole, or do they also the sub journeys within the mortgages tribe also have their own KPIs that way, or how do you organize? Just as an example, how is that organized at ING?
Yeah, well, they do have sub journeys that they measure, and they also bring squads together on a bigger customer journey. I'm not myself in the mortgage tribe, so I cannot share you any details about that. But I would like to, but I like to get back to what Wilco just said about targets should not come from above, and I fully agree with that. However, to make a cultural change from a delivery organization to a more customer-centric organization, it sometimes helps to do it for a while to make the switch. And then, well, that's my experience at least, and then have people do it more bottom line up. And the same goes for KPIs that are set like the link with value. We experienced in the beginning, like it would be useful to have that link clear to convince people that CX is important. Sometimes it was still needed somehow. But at some point, if you're really customer-centric company, it should be obviously that that good customer experience leads to more revenues and less costs. There's plenty of examples. If you take a little bit of a distance, your iPhone, everyone pays way too much for an iPhone only for the customer experience. I've 10 other examples of that. So if you confront people with that, people are just willing to pay more for customer experience. So it should not be a goal on its own to prove that CX delivers more value, well, sales or decreases costs. But again, in the beginning, if you're in a phase where you need to change things around, it might help to get it more on the agenda. So that was what I still wanted to add.
Yeah, what you guys both, I think both of you are saying is, you know, the team really needs to feel responsible for their own KPIs, but at the same time, they need to feel that management cares. And I think if you can strike that combination, I think that's sounds like you're both saying something in the direction of that.
And I really recognize what Stephanie is saying. I mean, it reminds me of the scene. I don't know if you've seen the movie Life of Brian by Monty Python, where he is standing in front of 100 people and say, "You are all individuals," and they say, "Yes, yes, we are all individuals." I mean, how do you get teams to be responsible yourself if they come from an history and a culture in the company where they were used to just follow because they were beaten into submission over years of just following what the directives are, and that's a catch-22. There's no right answer for it. You can have soft approaches in giving them trust and giving them room, but I've also found in big projects in let's say in transformations that sometimes teams, they're also in, you know, stop with giving me all that responsibility, just tell me what to do, because back then it was much easier, because then I knew I have to do this, and if I do it right, I'm good, and if I don't do it right, I'm not good. So getting into that culture, that's a difficult one, and I recognize the same that Stephanie. You say you want to have the teams do it, but sometimes you have to tell them to be independent. Yeah.
Agreed.
Would you do anything, Stephanie? Would you do anything different when you're looking back to when you started the CX Hub when it comes to goal setting and either using the top-down KPIs to set your team up for success and how it's done now? Would you say something or do something differently looking back, or advising your younger self like this was something I would change?
It's a difficult question because I know there's different approaches to this problem, improving a customer-centric culture, let's say. I believe that the way we approached it, the struggle I always had, certainly in the beginning, is that it takes a lot of patience to change a culture around. And I know that from theory as well. It's not something that is happened in a few months. I'm in general not a person with a lot of patience. So it was, in the beginning, it felt a little bit like pull and push and pull again. And if you didn't give it enough attention for a few weeks or months, then bam, it felt like it crashed like a pudding. I don't know if that's an English saying, but I think you know what I mean. So in the beginning, it takes a while. And I think the strength of the CX Hub is really the decentral model that we started with the enthusiasm of the people that are in it. So it's intrinsic motivation at the core. And that makes that other people get enthusiastic about it as well, because they see something good is happening there and I want to be part of it. Whereas if you would have started with a separate department on CX from the start, I think with other, we call it center of expertise in ING, with other center of expertise, I sometimes see that they get a bit too far away from the day-to-day. And the advantage of our model is that all the people that are in the CX Hub have worked in squads, in different roles, in tribes as well. But yeah, it's not, we are not saying how it should be. We just enable, and we understand what plays around in the different tribes. And what we do discover now is that, so we had at some point the oil stain was spreading, and at some moment you get traction and it hits off. It's like boom, now it's gone and it flies. Which is amazing. We really feel that there's a lot of energy and much more priority in the company compared to, let's say, a year ago. Are we there yet? No, but to make the next level of CX happen and accelerate even more and really make the impact on the customer experience at the customer side as well, not only internally, but also on the customer. At this moment, we are at the, how do you say that? The vooravond, the dawn of becoming a center of expertise CX, or there's gonna be a center of expertise CX in ING, which I think is the right moment. So now it's the time that is needed to bring it to the next level and to really have the mandate to accelerate. But you first need to, create the traction and the space for it.
Basically is a little bit what you're saying. So would you also say that larger organizations that are currently set up in an agile environment, agile work environment, or even have chapters and tribes that want to become more focused on the customer, use journeys to actually start working customer-centric, should start small and make a movement? Is that what you're trying to say?
It depends on how many support there is in the organization. I think if there's like, I don't know, if there's a very clear thought of changing the whole company around this subject, it might work. But if it's something that people want but are not fully convinced of yet, how does this work? Let's start small. We have thought about these things, and yeah, I think there's a safe for several options. But
what would you say, Wilco, if you look at it from your perspective? What would you say? You've seen many organizations, large and small, transforming from agile to customer-centric. How would you approach it? Would you agree with Stephanie is saying?
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree in the sense that I was also stuck on what you said. What would you have done differently? Or I think having no patience actually is a good thing because it can never go fast enough. And I think things that I look back on, if you try to make really a change, then looking back, I think there's comfort in whatever model you choose, and that's maybe let's say a disturbing conclusion towards the end of the talk. That whatever model you choose, I think it's from statistics that all models are wrong and some are useful. Sorry, in the sense that whatever model you choose, at some point you find out that they have flaws. And that you have created new problems. You've solved stuff and that you've created new problems. So maybe it's more about the change and doing things differently and shaking it up. And again, putting the customer in the middle. That's most important about this. And if you look at sometimes when you in a discussion, it's difficult. It's getting out of the comfort zone for you and for the teams. And you kind of compromise a little. Okay, this way it's easier. You always get bitten in the backside on the compromises you took then just to get it along. So I really recognize that one. Yeah.
And maybe if I can add to that, I have a friend that by accident, I didn't know, suddenly was appointed head of CX of I will not name the company, but quite a big company as well. And she contacted me like, hey, Steph, I hear you're customer experience lead within ING. How do I approach this? I don't know anything about CX. And I asked her like, okay, and how many people are you, or what are you heading? Yeah, I have a team of 10 people. And I was like, okay, and they all don't know anything about CX. I was like, okay, I don't know if that would be the right approach, that you just put a center of expertise there and, go for it.
Yeah.
So I think, like Wilco says, there's different ways to approach the same problem. I would probably wanted to have a bit more capacity from the start so that we could have even made more impact from the start. And now it was the agile way, just guerrilla style, like you said in the beginning, Jochem, try and error. And
what I like, Stephanie, is that you found this hybrid model of having people in the tribes being accountable and working on the journeys and on the content, while at the same time having a few people ring-fenced to free up time to enable all those other teams. And I think this, for large corporation, I can easily see how that works. For smaller companies, the core hub might not be needed. If you're really small, then maybe that's a bit over-engineering it. But I guess what you're saying is, and that's also answering maybe one of the questions from the audience here, is saying, when you're setting up a center of expertise, aren't you creating another silo? but I think you're still keeping the representatives in the tribes, I guess. Yeah, you're only supporting them with. Is that the intention, to keep it in that hybrid model?
Yeah, I think the question is well, a good one. It's a fear I have myself as well. We really need to be careful that we don't become another silo. What I think is going to be different than today, depending, we don't know yet how it's going to look like, the design and so on, who's going to be in there. I think it would be really strong if we keep indeed the second layer of the CX Hub with all the 6 chapters in there. And what is really additionally strong is that the COE lead, a Center of Expertise lead, will be in the discussions with the tribe leads that matter. At this moment, that is not the case. So the mandate will be stronger, and you can really more demand certain things, whereas now it's still a little bit too voluntarily. Is that, I don't know, that's good to say.
No, I recognize that. Yeah, we do it the same. Yeah. And so if you make it voluntary, it's then it's loose end and it doesn't combine anymore. So but on the other hand, I really recognize the difference between having it's a balance, right? So if you make it central, you can do some things better about what are policies across the product, what are to have the alignment. But if you don't watch out, you become a silo again. And if you do it everything in the decentralized teams, then maybe they are reinventing the wheel that you did somewhere else, or they are missing practices that would really help if they all using the same. So for example, and not on CX, but with other chapters that we're working together, for example, on developers, what we're doing more and more, and we're in the middle of that, so we're also constantly changing, is that the chapter is basically everybody is in multidisciplinary teams, but they are also part of the chapter. And what we want to do is give them dedicated time to be in their chapter. So for 80% of that time, they're in their vertical teams, and for 20% of the time, they're really working on the work in the chapter, and in trying to prevent that you get those silos, and at the same time, really dedicating time that they don't consider it, let's say, some mandatory hobby that they don't put time into. But yeah, it's trying to find it out all the time. Yeah,
so this was a nice question. Thanks, Martijn. Very good point. And just zooming out a bit, what we're actually saying is these journeys, or chapters as we call them, cut across the whole organization. Question for both of you. I think it's a nice one from Deve Arwe. I don't know. I don't think this is a real name, but thanks for the question. Are customers part of your teams? I mean, we do research, we talk to them, we have customer journeys, but are actual customers part of your team every now and then, all the time?
I like it. Yeah, I really like that question. And I think technology is helping us more and more to make that possible. I mean, we do interviews, so we try to have as many contact with customers directly, in qualitative research. We try to get feedback in all kinds of ways from the behavior that the customers show, and also asking them when they're on the platform. And what I did in another program, we're not doing that at RTL, I'd really love to do that, is making them part of the development process. So really we had a community in which we would test new ideas with them, and see what their reaction was, to have some kind of let's call it a special group of customers that we can try things out on. And that's what we do, of course, also with A/B testing and set-based design, that we try sometimes things out and see what the reactions are. So in those times, it's I like the question. We try to get the customer into the team as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, same good. I think 90% of what you just said, Wilco, is applicable to ING as well. Are they really part of of teams in ING as they are structurally organized? If you have good ideas on that, I'm happy to hear those. I think at this moment it would be quite a challenge to do that. But we do also customer validations. We involve customers, real customers, also in design sprints, for instance. If you really want to make new innovative features or solutions for customers, we really involve them in the process. For instance, on the CX, we have yearly a big customer experience day in which we all together try to make as many improvements as we can in one day. To make existing journeys better for the customer. There's real customers available on that day to immediately test things with and then check if it's really fulfilling their needs and so on. So we try to do that. Can it be better? Yes, like it can still be 5 times better than today. But at some point, at some point is not the right word. In some way, they're already quite, well, more or less, depending on how customer-centric a squad or a tribe already is, part of the teams. Also in terms of feedback, we have a feedback tool in which we on real time can see what customers are saying about our digital or non-digital experiences.
I was going to say, because with the new latest digital tools, it's also much easier to get real-time feedback, especially through your digital channels, of course, on specific elements and touch points. And of course, then if you can add more thorough qualitative research every now and then to also look more at a future need perspective, I think that could, that if you can, one or left or right, integrate that into your way of working, that's.
But it is scary, right? I mean, what I also notice is that for teams who are used to work heads down on projects, good or bad for the customer doesn't matter, but talking to them, reaching out to them, having a conversation and figuring out what they need is scary, right? Do you guys also facilitate that in your teams? I guess you do, but do you, like Stephanie, you gave the great example, but more, do you also make teams accountable for talking to enough customers? Is that something you also have as a standard practice or tactic?
Well, actually, if I may, Wilco, we do see that people find it scary to talk to customers. I don't know why, but I think it costs a lot of time, costs money. They don't know how, and they're scared of the customer for some reason. So at some point last year, we also said, okay, customer validations are so important to ING. If there's a big hurdle apparently to do them, let's bring the customers to the teams. So what we did is we set up a task force on customer validations. And on a monthly basis, we bring now, well, not anymore with Corona, but now we do it virtually. So we brought before Corona customers to the floor and in a few meeting rooms where, well, depending on the target group that the squad was working on, and they could just go to the meeting room, be a little bit prepped by us up front on how you do customer interviews and so on. And they didn't have any reason anymore not to talk to customers. And stronger at this moment, we have a target on doing customer validations. So we have developed a CX, we call it the CX growth scan, in which we, amongst others, measure how much squads are actually doing customer validations in their tribes. And the target for this year is to move it specifically on that item and also on experiments, 1 level up compared to this year. So if we saw a lot of green, a lot of orange and red still and that's not good. So they should move 1 level up, like from orange to yellow, or from red to orange, or from yellow to green. And again, not so much fan of target setting from a top-down perspective, but we do see that once people did do customer validations once, it opens a whole new world for them. Like, oh my God, I was always thinking that I was right. One of my colleagues once mentioned, like, once she did the first time validation, she afterwards said, I cannot imagine how I could ever have been so arrogant to think that I knew what the customer wanted. And that's exactly the effect we want to reach by putting first targets and enabling this in this way, like really taking people by the hand, and afterwards we hope they go do it themselves more and more because they really see the value of it.
That's perfect. That's a perfect way to end this this conversation. You wanted to add to that, Wilco, as a last thought before we go?
No, I think it's a great conclusion because I totally concur with it, and just wanted to add that I do understand that sometimes for teams it's scary to talk with customers because customers can also sometimes really be angry at something that doesn't work, and sometimes you just see them through the customer care department when they have a complaint or they're not happy about something. But what I really liked about what Stephanie said, and I recognize that, for myself as well, we've been talking about being customer centric and trying to do, but you still have a prejudice, and you think you know what the customer wants, and you're always surprised that you don't actually. Well, maybe a little bit, but yeah. So I like Stephanie's conclusion.
Yeah, and I think as with any relationship, you have to have that conversation to improve it. So I was going to say.
Lovely, guys. If we look at actually our wide-ranging conversation from today, we put it on the screen with Herman, who has been quite busy with drawing what we actually told. We will summarize this a little bit. I still also need to figure out what we just learned and how we can actually turn it into practice, into our model. But if there's one thing that we have seen today, is that journey management and putting journey teams in the heart of your organization is essential to differentiate yourself as a brand or product. So Wilco, Stephanie, thank you so much for this wide-ranging conversation and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Very welcome.
Great to be here. I thought it was a great conversation. Learned a lot as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I also enjoyed it a lot, and very useful. Good to also hear the story of Wilco, and yeah, taking some best practices with me. So I hope the same goes for the audience.
Perfect, thank you. So before we take off, we have one more thing. The next live stream is planned for March 24, because we've learned how this whole world is evolving. We've seen journey frameworks put into practice, and today we talked about organizing teams. But if you have all that, how do you actually facilitate the collaboration? So this was a primer on the next topic, basically, where we really want to go in the weeds and look how operations, journey management, teams, and collaboration can actually get done in small and large organizations. So we'll dive into the practical ways of doing it. We'll share you a link. And of course, before the weekend, if we make it, we will summarize everything from today and share the insights Stephanie and Wilco have created for us today on redefining customer journey management. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. We're a little bit ahead of time, out of time, over time, how do you say it? Because of the little plumbing hiccup of the internet, but the recording will be edited later by our team. So you will get a perfect, clean and relaxed recording in your inbox. So thank you for today, and see you next time for another episode of Redefining Customer Journey Management. Bye, guys.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.